If found footage is about cursed images and finding scary videos, Undertone asks a nastier question. What if the thing that destroys you isn't what you see, but what you hear? It takes podcasting, nursery rhymes, Catholic imagery, and caregiver guilt and turns them into a movie that feels less like a haunted house film and more like a haunted listening experience. Before we even get into the plot, I think the most important thing to understand about Undertone is how personal its universe is. It's not just a filmmaker borrowing creepy internet aesthetics because podcasts and ARGs are currently trendy. Ian originally conceived the project as a scripted audio story, basically a radio play or podcast narrative about people investigating strange recordings. Then when his parents got sick, he had to become their caregiver, and the movie deepened into something much more intimate and painful. He wrote it in that emotional headspace, and then he shot the film in the same childhood home where that caregiving happened. The backstory is why the world of this movie feels unusually coherent. The house is not just a spooky location, it's memory and its obligation and its guilt. It is the safest place in your life becoming the place you no longer can escape. Ian has even outright said that he wanted to take the safest place, your mother, your childhood home, and the place you'd run to when you were scared, and make it haunted. And everything in this movie grows out of that idea. Evie puts on noise-canceling headphones to record paranormal podcasts, which is the very tool she uses to stay focused, but it also cuts her off from the world around her. The film then uses that isolation as its main scare device. So even though it is absolutely a supernatural horror movie, it also works like a story about caregiver burnout, sensory isolation, and the way online investigation can trap you inside your own mind. There's even an official ARG extension to all of this. A24 launched a fake Undertone podcast site with ARG House, complete with extra case files and a 10 puzzle contest. So the film's universe doesn't just reference internet horror culture, it actually extended itself into that place. From there, the character breakdown gets really clean. Evie is the skeptic found on the podcast, but that skepticism is a double duty. It's not just her role in the show, it's pretty much how she lives, and it's her emotional self-defense. She has detached from her religion, detached from her family, lied to herself about her own drinking habits and addictions, and is trying to treat every warning sign in the house like it must have some reasonable explanation. Her whole arc is basically about denial. On the other hand, Justin is their believer, and he's also more than that. He's Evie's connection to somebody who still sees her, still listens to her, and even still tries to help. He is basically her last thread to a life outside of her house. I also got some hints of romantic tension between the two of them, so maybe that was a possible former relationship. But the complete opposite can be said for Darren. Darren matters because he barely matters. The movie doesn't actually need him to become a full subplot. His absence is pretty much the point they're going for. It represents that Evie's support is not there. Then we have Mike and Jessa, who we can hear through the recordings. They are the movie's echo chamber. Their story mirrors Evie's story. A home, a pregnancy, domestic intimacy turning into something hostile, and a woman becoming vulnerable to a force tied to motherhood and infant death. And then hanging over everybody is Abazu. In folklore, Abazu is a demon associated with childbirth, miscarriage, newborn death, and envy. In the movie, the older folklore gets updated into an audio age curse. The demon doesn't just live in an object or a place. It seems to travel through listening, through repetition, and through the act of inviting a voice into your head. The plot itself is actually pretty simple on paper, and it's why the movie works so well. Evie is back at home caring for her dying mother, and it feels like the only thing left she can control is her paranormal podcast she records with Justin. For the next episode, Justin receives an anonymous email containing 10 audio files. At first, that sounds like a normal enough setup for a spooky podcast episode. But the files are recordings made by Mike, who is trying to prove to his pregnant partner Jessa that she talks in her sleep. That alone is already unsettling because sleep talking is harmless right up until the movie makes it not harmless. In the first couple files, we can hear Jessa singing nursery rhymes in her sleep, and a couple other ones the audio warps. Further down the line, she starts to chant strange phrases, and then even further, Mike and Jessa start hearing noises in the house. And Evie and Justin begin doing what all podcast hosts do, replaying, isolating, reversing, and researching every little detail. That's the key mechanism of the film. Investigation of this subject becomes almost like a contamination. The more they listen, the more the curse gets a foothold. The nursery rhyme material is one of the smartest parts of the movie in my opinion, but I think it's more important to phrase it correctly. Undertone is tapping into the folklore that these songs carry dark buried meanings. It's not giving you the literal history lecture. So when the film links songs like London Bridge, Baa Baa Black Sheep, and Rockabye Baby to sacrifice, punishment, and parental failure, it's using the way those rhymes survive as cultural ghosts. We inherit them in childhood, and we rarely ask what kinds of fear or discipline they were carrying in the first place. And that is exactly what Undertone is about. Inherited fear. As the files get worse, the boundary between Mike and Jessa's house and Evie's house start collapsing. Bangs on the recording sound like they're happening upstairs. Running water in one space seems to leak into the other. Lights turn on by themselves. Even her mama starts to move. Even a religious statue kept by Mama's bedside keeps reappearing every time Evie tries to hide it away. The movie never lets Evie or us feel sure whether whether the sound belongs to the tapes, the house, or her own unraveling mind. Then the film drops the pregnancy reveal. Evie is pregnant too, and suddenly every thread locks into place. Mama is upstairs dying, the woman on the recordings is pregnant, Evie is pregnant, the demon's folklore is about attacking women around childbirth. The house is saturated with Catholic imagery. And Evie herself is caught between daughterhood and possible motherhood at that exact moment, and she is least equipped to handle either. This is also where the cryptic email text starts to matter. If you read it as some version of atonement and tenet, it becomes a mini thesis for the entire message of the movie. Atonement gives you guilt, repayment, and the sense that something must be made right. Tenet gives you belief, structure, doctrine, and inherited moral architecture. And Evie is trapped inside both. She wants outside of the situation with her mother. She feels monstrous for wanting that. She may not consciously live by the religion she grew up with anymore, and that guilt structure still owns her. That's why I don't think that Undertone is really arguing that unbelief invites evil. I think it's arguing that denial invites collapse. The more Evie refuses the truth of what she feels, the more the house externalizes it. Even visually, the movie keeps telling you this. The camera is constantly holding on to negative space behind Evie. It's peering into hallways, framing doors, and lingering where nothing is happening, except psychologically. By the time we reach the last files, Undertone stops feeling like an investigation and starts feeling like a ritual that has already gone too far. Mike and Jess's recordings become pure panic, crying, screaming, reverse nursery rhymes, a collapsing domestic space, and the growing sense that whatever happened in their house is now listening to the people listening back. Then the caller stories widen the movie scope. The horror no longer feels local. It feels recurring. It feels like Abazu is less a single entity and more like a pattern, a force that keeps resurfacing around pregnancy, maternal fear, infant death, and impossible guilt. Inside Evie's house, all the imagery converges. Her crayon drawings now feel less random and more possessed. The TV image she once treated as a joke becomes a weapon aimed back at her. The house loses whatever fragile boundary it had between reality and tape logic. And Mama upstairs shifts from being a suffering body to becoming something much more terrible, a corrupted form of what should have been safety. Evie's confession is the emotional key to the ending. When she says she killed her mother, I do not read that as an actual murder confession. I read it as the movie finally verbalizing the poison it has been feeding in the entire runtime. She feels responsible because caregiving has twisted desire into guilt. She wanted distance and she wanted relief, and more importantly, she wanted it to be over. In her mind, that becomes the same thing as causing death. And this fits directly with what Ian has said about the movie. He has described the film as coming out of repressed guilt, denial, addiction, and the isolation that follows you when you lie about how badly you're doing. So Evie's confession is not the answer. It's the culmination. She's finally saying out loud what the demon has been feeding on this entire time. That's why there is no cathartic release afterward. This is not a story where confession equals cleansing, and we're shown that after. The caller laughs, the house escalates, Mama becomes actively threatening. The film gives us backward movement, blackout, crying babies, and the sense that Evie herself is now being folded into the same chain of violence and inheritance that has been tracing through the file. So what literally happened? From what I can tell, Evie reaches the point of full supernatural possession once the last recording, her pregnancy, her confession, and Mama's body all converge. Abazu claims her, and probably her unborn child too. But symbolically, the ending is even harsher than that. Undertone is built around the fantasy of reversal. Backward audio, repeated lullabies, reverse movement, clocks moving the wrong way. Everything in the movie is haunted by the desire to undo. Undo abandonment, undo resentment, undo relapse, undo years of emotional distance, even undo the future itself. And the final blackout is the movie's way of saying that none of it can be undone. So when everything goes black in Mama's bedroom, I don't read that as the film going empty. I read it as the film reaching what it was intended, its purest form. This started as found audio. It ends by taking image away and leaving us with what really mattered all along. Panic, crying, movement, dread, and a protagonist trapped in a darkness that sound can no longer help her map. And that's why Undertone really sticks with me. It's not just a curse file or a demon or a dying parent. It's about what happens when online horror collides with the oldest fears imaginable. Losing your mother, becoming a mother, and realizing too late that the thing haunting your house may be the truth that you kept refusing to say out loud. And my final takes on the film, I absolutely loved it. I loved the sound immersion. Even with the plot being a little lackluster in my opinion, I was absolutely enthralled the entire 2 times I saw it, because the audio absolutely captures you. The sound design, the negative space, and the near solo structure that makes the movie feel genuinely immersive. The only really major complaint I had about it is that in the second half, it over explains and overpiles what it's going for. Like, hey, like this is what I'm trying to say, and it's trying to shove it in our face. But overall, I'd recommend everyone go and see this film. It's an absolute masterpiece in horror. If you guys did enjoy this breakdown and this ending explained, please let me know by dropping a like on this video and subscribing. It's the best way you can support the channel, and it's completely free, and it really does mean a lot to me. If you want to check out any of my other film breakdowns, they're going to be on screen right now, and I'll see you guys later.